Michigan is experiencing record-breaking sales in their flower market, but how has this impacted the illicit market, specifically in cities like Detroit, and have been denied access to the adult legal market until recently? The counties surrounding the city have done well with their rec market, while Detroit has had most of the market potential pushed into the city's black and gray markets or forced to shop outside of the city, with these dollars pumping up the surrounding areas. During the 2020 pandemic, 70% of purchases were still being made outside of retail stores, with 20% of the population participating in all sales. Meanwhile, the rest of the world was experiencing a change in society that had already been the way of life in Detroit. Welcome to the next episode in our Trap Tree City series, where we cover the trappers, smugglers, and hustlers in the illicit and gray markets. You'll want to buckle up for this one. We're heading into Motor City, Detroit, Michigan. Anyways, please make sure to the like button, hit the subscribe button, follow us on all social medias. Links are down below in the description. This is LMC. Let's run it. Before we move on with the video, I want to say a big thank you to our sponsor, GoPack. GoPack is a fashion-centric, smell-proof accessory bag that allows for everyday partakers to be able to organize everything and be able to be on the go, hence the name GoPack. And you know, they got all different types of stuff in these bags, right? You got your rolling tray, you got a lock for it, you got, you know, a poker, you got all different types of stuff, a bunch of extra stuff that I'm not even naming in this really, but a bunch of different compartments as well. It's smell proof, like I said. It was created by engineers actually that just also have a love for the smoke. And you know, I'm a big fan of the way, you know, the way it looks, the way it feels, and the exact overall layout of it, right? You also got the miniature version of the GoPack. There's a bunch of other versions of the GoPack at gopackstation.com. If you want to support my channel, also get yourself some really dope gear. I want you guys to go to gopackstation.com and use my discount code LMC10 so you're gonna get 10% off your order. Let's jump back into the content. Before legalization, Michigan had many ports and entry points for Canadian smugglers to bring their product down from cultivation hotspots like British Columbia. I talked about this in the Trap Tree video I did about my hometown of Seattle, where I go into detail about BC and the early trappers in the Pacific Northwest. But Detroit, being near the border of Canada, was also an easy target for trappers looking for a major hub to cash in on. Meanwhile, major shipments from northern Cali and Mexico were being flown in. States like Arizona also acted as Mexican distribution hubs to smuggle flour using U-Hauls, moving trucks, vans, and so forth, with the US interstate system to transport directly into cities like Detroit. During Detroit's golden era of smuggling, the most common flour pushed here were gotta be the different perp varieties. The perp in particular came in from the Bay Area. Though it originated from southern Humboldt County, it moved into San Francisco when a grower gifted a Granddaddy perp plant to Ken Estes, who cultivated it into a popularity. After a motorcycle accident that left Ken paralyzed from the neck down, he met a Vietnam War vet that offered him some flour and completely changed his life. Since then, the Granddaddy Purple has grown, or the GDP, has grown exponentially due to the illicit market's love for its look. Those days, it was rare to see such deep purple colors, which made it easy for it to basically market itself to buyers. But over time, more and more people have become used to a wide spectrum of hues, but the plant that became rooted in the 90s hip-hop culture had a direct influence on the marketing throughout the eras of perp genetics all the way into the modern-day exotics that you find in the streets of Detroit. In the early days, whatever flower popped off in the Bay, like GDP, could easily pop off in a parallel city entrenched in hip-hop like Detroit. As time went on, more of the OG Cali cultivars started to hit the Detroit market, with Larry OG having a run only to be replaced by the OG, which really started dominating nationally going into the 2000s. Now, it was clear up to the point that the Cali and Michigan illicit markets operated hand in hand, but in 2008, after medical legalization, northern Michigan was also becoming a hotspot for its own illicit operations. And this has been the case, honestly, for the last 3 decades prior. But anyway, the state created a flower caregiving program that allowed anyone 21 or older to grow 12 plants. But if you live in a home with multiple adults, you were allowed an additional 12 plants per person. Near central Michigan in Saginaw, A home was raided that resulted in 1,200 plants seized. Unless there were 100 people living in that house, then I'm pretty sure these were meant for the illicit market. Now, during the time, there was no licensing required to become a caregiver. You simply had to register yourself as one with the state. However, regulations made adjustments to require a special license that would place them into the state's seed-to-sale flower tracking program. But this hasn't stopped illicit growers from bypassing that altogether. Some would consider this territory's high concentration of outdoor grow ops as the Humboldt of the Midwest. Humboldt being the outdoor grow op mecca in the US. And that has actually resulted in award-winning quality cultivation. See, by 2014, the Gorilla Glue had been cultivated to its peak in Michigan, winning high awards in both Michigan and even LA's market. Michigan trappers now had an award-winning name that they could push across the country, spreading the popularity of glue into the top 10 bestsellers as recently as last year, according to Leafly. Now, before we move on, I want to invite you to connect with me on your favorite social media platforms, right? Follow me to stay updated on new LMC content, and please make sure to connect, like I said, on another platform at the very least, because you never know what could happen here on YouTube. Anyway, the links to all my platforms are in the description, and don't forget to like and subscribe here on YouTube. Now, let's get back into Detroit's trappers and smugglers. On the first day of legalized flower in Michigan, only 4 dispensaries were available, with 3 in Ann Arbor and 1 in Morenci. This left few lucky shops to rake in almost $250,000 sales in one day. But this also left things wide open for the illicit market to infiltrate without such restriction to their promoting or business practices. Illegal delivery services and storefronts began popping up exponentially after adult use became legal, almost immediately. It was common to find fully functional websites and Facebook pages dedicated to illicit home operations. Others took advantage of websites like Maps where they could advertise their products and services without any proof of licensing. This is something states like California are in the process of legislating against in the near future. Those were the days of traditional plastic sandwich baggies or Ziploc bags. Nowadays, many caregivers have started moving their product out of plastic sandwich bags into sleek Mylar packs with their own branding, while others imitate the well-known industry brands. Especially when it comes to the popular brands supported in the hip-hop communities in both Detroit and back in Cali. And along with those modern brands and trappers came more exotic hybrids and genetics. Right now, Detroit's most popular flower on the streets is Lemon Cherry Gelato. It's also popular in DC, which is another Trap Tree Series video I have coming up, so make sure to subscribe and click the notification bell. Now, from 2013 to 2018, there was a 5-year boom in Detroit's illicit flower market. Detroit's land bank program allowed people to buy properties for literally $1,000. Caregivers were buying up the vacated, rundown properties in Detroit and turned them into dispos. Some kept things simple with cardboard menus with $5 flower posted for sale, while others put in high-level effort to generate potential millions with vertically integrated operations. The trap was bringing life back to the neighborhoods, with income flowing in to revamp storefronts with fresh paint and signage, with more and more abandoned buildings and homes being converted. Residents here almost immediately began to notice Detroit turning around after medical flower became available for trappers to start making major moves inside their own city, rather than relying on the imports from Cali, Canada, or Mexico. There was a direct correlation that could be seen between the renovated areas in the city and the locations of the trap houses. Now, Detroit has been some interesting plays in the flower market here, with the city flooded with illicit activity. The market was so saturated here that in 2021, a car running a red light made a garbage truck swerve into a brick building, knocking down the entire corner section, revealing one of the hundreds of illicit grow ops in the city. In March last year, a junkyard was faking paperwork to cover their illegal chop shop / grow op, and they were partially out stolen vehicles, accumulating around $100,000 in parts and compacting the leftovers while operating a grow op in a separate building. Quite literally seeing a merging of the famous name for Detroit, Motor City, and this new illicit market / legal market that has come about. But perhaps the most brazen was a guy who attached a vending machine onto the side of his house in West Detroit. It was state-of-the-art, complete with a touchscreen and the ability to take credit cards and even Apple Pay. He said he ran this machine for 4 years, making around $2,000 a day. The only reason he was caught was because someone tipped the ATF off that there were illicit firearms on the property. After a couple of months of collecting evidence through the vending machine and obtaining a search warrant, they found 18 firearms, including a sawed-off shotgun and several units of flour. Now, still, these plants are moving much further than Detroit or Michigan, especially when surrounding states like Illinois and Ohio. Illinois residents complain about high taxes and pricing from growers that is getting passed down to the buyer. At the same time, Ohio's flour is nearly twice as much as Michigan's. It was and still is incredibly common for people to cross the border from Illinois or Ohio to pick up their flour and illicitly head back home. Shops in Grand Rapids, Ann Arbor, and Detroit have claimed up to 50% of their clientele coming in from Ohio, and this has given plenty of opportunity for smugglers in Michigan to transport into bordering states due to the high demand for illicit product in these legal markets. In January of 2022, more than $3 million worth of flour was seized in Michigan's Port Huron that was bound for Columbus, Ohio, in a food shipment trunk. Let us know in the comments if you want us to cover Columbus or any other city in Ohio in this series. Definitely let us know down in the comments. Now, but according to Detroit police, there was a surge of contraband that emerged from the pandemic's lockdown travel restrictions that the illicit market took advantage of. Many Detroit residents would agree that the global pandemic was somewhat of a global introduction to the way of life here in their city. Before the pandemic in Detroit, there was nowhere to go, with stores shut down permanently, buildings abandoned with no real place for families to gather. There were no real jobs here, at least not the big corporate jobs paying six-figure checks. And with the introduction of the rec market, even the traditional market took a major hit. The supply is more available than ever from the legal market. And as Detroit's surrounding areas continue to see economic growth, the legal dispensaries of the suburbs are taking in most of the profits. At the same time, the overall flour sales in Michigan are breaking records, but the results also led to record high criminal activity. In May of 2022, 12 people were charged with breaking into 21 dispos in just a 6-week period going into 2023. 13 delivery drivers were robbed at gunpoint, with some assaulted and even having their car stolen. The delivery robberies came during record-breaking sales in Michigan's flour market, hitting the almost $250 million in 1 month going into 2023. Plus, criminals are more willing to commit crime on shops and services that aren't playing by the rules. These crimes have a high chance of going unreported, with a risk of having their store audited by the state. But even the legal shops are targeted because of their lack of access to traditional banking. This leaves most shops operating with cash only. But recently we've started seeing many licensed shops starting to accept debit and even credit cards as a temporary workaround using a number of different methods, but that's for another video. But this hasn't been great news for the medical market either. It has seen a 60% drop year over year, with the market now sitting at around $10 million. Meanwhile, rec has increased by 60% year over year. And this is partially due to a lot of the shops deciding to convert from med and rec to rec only or limited medical. The main strategy has been simply to give medical patients a medical discount when shopping for rec products. Essentially, they cover the added 10% excess tax and that the medical patient usually would pay. Combined with the larger selection of recreational products and the shrinking med promo, we are seeing the market shift to a more so just complete rec sales market. Now, overall, Michigan's flour market has seen prices plummeting since legalization. What started at $500 in OZ has dropped down to $80 on average. This has definitely caused problems for some of the big corporate brands like Skyman. Skyman is one of the largest vertically integrated operators in Michigan. They control 24 storefronts with 3 indoor grow ops. However, they're only pulled in about $110 million of the $263 million they're projected to their investors. Tropics LP, a Canadian investment firm, is suing, claiming they're owed more than $127 million. A New York investment firm is also suing their affiliates, alleging misrepresentation of financials and management. This highlighting the risks associated with the cost of doing business in the legal market compared to the illicit market, and the cost that customers aren't willing to pay in a high-end dispensary. In 2019, there were roughly over 2 times the number of illicit shops compared to the legal ones. Once rec was available, legit shops in Detroit like the Reef claimed to have lost 30 to 40% of their sales to the illicit market. Michigan has sent cease and desist orders statewide to suspected trap shops. The state issued a warning to all illicit operations to cease business by December 31st in 2019 to remain eligible for a legal license. With the average shop bringing in 6 figures of untaxed monthly revenue, it was a warning that wasn't heavily acknowledged. In some cities, it's much easier to regulate due to them completely opting out of the flour market altogether. So in cities like Canton, any shop selling flour whatsoever is getting shut down. There are 1,764 communities in Michigan that have opted out and counting. This makes the licensing fee more rare and valuable than they already are, with a $6,000 application fee and a $66,000 licensing fee. Now, for years, Detroit stalled in the med market while the rest of the state transitioned direct. This created a dead zone in Detroit that led to its suburbs and surrounding counties like Oakland, Macomb, and Wayne reaping the benefits of the new flower industry instead of the city itself. For someone like Kimberly Scott, a 41-year-old former history school teacher and nurse, this would be the root cause of the closure of her dispo within only 6 months of opening. She started off as a caregiver and transitioned into a dispensary called Chronic City. But being a med shop in a city not allowed to sell to adults, well, she had to compete with people willing to travel elsewhere for their purchase. Not to mention, at this time, the city counted 240 gray market dispos, noting that only a small handful were even owned by any Detroit residents. Also, strict zoning laws keep entrepreneurs like Kimberly from even purchasing ideal locations in the city once recreational flower was legalized. Investors with deeper pockets came in and bought up most of the best properties in Detroit's legal green zone. Now, this has been a major issue for the new social equity recipients in Detroit. 50% of the licenses in Detroit have been reserved for those disproportionately impacted by flower laws. As long as you've lived in Detroit for over 10 years or are partnering with someone who is willing to be the 51% owner, then low income or previous flower convictions won't disqualify you from the program. Just days ago, as I made this video, the second Black-owned Detroit Legacy dispensary opened. This was literally just a week after the first one, and this is directly due to 34 applicants being approved to open last December. High-profile Flower Shop and Nuggets Flower in Detroit have just the beginning of a new recreational market in Detroit. But Detroit's population is 85% Black. Michigan's overall has a 14% Black population, with only 3% operating as owners in the flower industry. Now, really quickly too, when we talk about different smuggling routes that are typically used into Detroit, we typically see with the different eras of smuggling styles have occurred with Detroit. Same thing, just like everywhere else in the country, right? We started with initially, you started to see U-Hauls, then it went to mailing, then now it's pretty much gone to people, chartering private planes. And all three of those tactics are still used today, but definitely wanted to mention that before we jump into the very last part of this video. Now, Detroit has a long history with social movements stemming from the counterculture movement that has spread across the entire US by the 60s and 70s. Around this time, a counterculture leader in Detroit, John Sinclair, was a major flower supporter and believed in its decriminalization. However, a female undercover cop would bust him for 2 J's, resulting in a 10-year sentence. The sentencing was meant to serve as an example to the community, however, that ended up backfiring entirely. This garnered national news coverage, capturing the attention of more than 15,000 that showed up in Ann Arbor, just 40 miles outside of Detroit, for the John Sinclair Freedom Rally. Among those that spoke and are performed at the rally included John Lennon, Yoko Ono, Stevie Wonder, and others, including another Black Panther Party co-founder, Bobby Seale. Literally 3 days after the rally, Sinclair was released from prison, spending less than 3 of the 10 years of his sentence. Inspired by the success of the John Sinclair Freedom Rally in 1972, Ann Arbor held the first annual Hash Bash. And this was an event that celebrates the plant and brings together enthusiasts from around the country with music, live speakers, food, and of course, flower. Now, definitely let me know in the comments what flower events you've been to and which ones do you want me to come to in the near future. I definitely am going to make it out to Hash Bash next year. I heard it was very, very fun this year from my friends. Now, also, before we wrap this up, we are in the process of expanding our team. We're looking for content creatives in all departments, from video editors, thumbnail designers, script writers, social media managers, and more. If you're a fan of our videos and feel you have the skills to help grow LMC to the next level, then make sure to follow me on all the social medias and email me with the subject line LMC team at highdesignbusiness@gmail.com. Please include a short cover letter explaining why you would be a good fit, and your resume and online portfolio with links to your previous work. I look forward to possibly working with you in the future. Like I said, either email me or DM me. And also, don't forget to check out the Trap Tree videos I did covering my hometown about Seattle's trappers and smugglers. You can watch it by clicking on this video here. Anyways, big shouts out to Detroit, shout out to the D, big shouts out to Michigan, and big shouts out to the Midwest. Anyways, this is LMC signing out. thank you to our sponsor, GoPack. GoPack is a fashion-centric, smell-proof accessory bag that allows for everyday partakers to be able to organize everything and be able to be on the go, hence the name GoPack. And you know, they got all different types of stuff in these bags, right? You got your rolling tray, you got a lock for it, you got, you know, a poker, you got all different types of stuff, a bunch of extra stuff that I'm not even naming in this really, but a bunch of different compartments as well. It's smell proof, like I said. It was created by engineers actually that just also have a love for the smoke. And you know, I'm a big fan of the way, you know, the way it looks, the way it feels, and the exact overall layout of it, right? You also got the miniature version of the GoPack. There's a bunch of other versions of the GoPack at gopackstation.com. If you want to support my channel, also get yourself some really dope gear. I want you guys to go to gopackstation.com and use my discount code LMC10 so you're gonna get 10% off your order.